when you're scaling that much, right? When your business is growing, especially like you said, since you've come on the last 10 years, what are some of the challenges with that?
Finding people is the hardest challenge. Any business will tell you, including construction business, architectural and engineering business.
I saw in the 90s how hard my father worked to build the company, right? The way I saw it, he started it as a mom and pop. We are a middle-sized business. Now we're trying to get to this place where we become like an institutional business.
Thanks for joining the CBIA BizCast powered by Google. I'm Amanda Marlowe. I'm excited to be here today with a father-son duo who is really taking the architectural and engineering space here in Connecticut and globally, really, by storm. We have Abul Islam and Tariq Islam. Abul is the founder, president, and CEO of AI Engineers. And Tariq, you are the chief of staff.
Yes.
Welcome to the BizCast.
Thank you for having us.
We're excited to have you here. I know you have been so deeply involved with CBIA, but a lot of the things that you guys are doing in your business and even just your business's operational stories is so fascinating. We wanted to share that a little bit. You started in 1993, have since become a global company, 350 employees in the US, more than 70 overseas. Engineering News Record ranks you in the top 500 architectural firms, competing for projects with some of the nation's largest firms. What's it like to hear that, coming from where you did?
It's exciting, but we worked at it. It took us 34 years to be where we are today. And we're also witnessing the change in everything. We have to be adaptable with the new technology. All of those things somebody from the baby boom generation is also very exciting and new learning that I couldn't imagine 34 years ago, how our industry, how the world will change around us. So we're enjoying every bit of it and trying to grow the company, adapting some of the new technologies that we have today.
And for you, Tariq, what's it like seeing the company's growth right now?
I mean, it's been tremendous. I've been with the company about 10 years and we have basically tripled in growth since I joined the company. I was actually, before today's podcast, I was just looking at our revenue books of like when I joined the company, what was the revenue like and how many people did we have? I think we were at about 18 million in revenue and we had about a little like 90 employees. We didn't even hit the 100 person mark. And today, to see where we are today, we're going to hit probably like we are at $77 million in revenue, probably hitting $80 million in revenue by the end of this year. And then already we have 350 plus staff. So it's just like it's a huge growth in just 10 years,
So let's kind of walk back to the beginning a little bit. You were working as an engineer. Talk to us about creating this business.
I lived through many recessions, few of them, and it was at the height of recession in the 90s that I started the company. There was, fortunately, a disadvantaged business program by many DOTs, and I got certified as a disadvantaged business back in the early 90s. That was a boon for me. I started getting jobs, small jobs as a sub-consulting with some of the big players that we compete right now. And that was the springboard of growth, that started. However, it was a lot of struggle. The projects were small. We couldn't afford a lot of things as in a growth-oriented business, including employees. We had very few employees. I used to even do work myself on the side for the first 2 years, trying to use my professional engineering license to work at night in New York City or Boston, review reports and daytime running the business in Connecticut. So
just to make sure that you had enough income coming in.
I mean, I like to speak to this because sometimes Abul was the one I saw in the 90s, how hard my father worked to build the company, right? And that was when I would say we had a very normal middle class upbringing. And you see like the foundations of scaling the business to what it is today. And especially in the first, I would say like basically the first 20 years of the business, you're really like trying to get the business to stability, right? And it's really hard. I think I always say the 90s is like was the make or break for AI engineers as an entity, and then like it gets obviously progressively better. And I saw like as the company grew, like success, I can like kind of like benchmark our families financial successes, to the company's growth, etc. But like to Abul's point, when you see it, like you see all that struggle, it's not easy in the beginning. It's a lot of work, and I kudos to my father, a lot of sacrifice.
At what point, so, Tariq said kind of like the 90s. Is that when you felt the company was really, taking off?
Yes, 90s. I said that early 90s, 93, 94, 95, 96. Got some, senior people hired in 94, 95. I could afford them. I did not take much of a salary because those people, I had to pay them market rate and then some more for working for a smaller company. I did all of those things. And I remember from 93 to 97, my W-2, my wife's W-2 was much less than some of the highly paid employees. So I had the heart to pay people more just because they're doing the work. And I need them for my clients, Department of Transportation, bridge, highway, transportation, building, construction folks, and I have to steal them from the market. I have to pay their due share. So whatever is left at the end of the year, that was for me and my wife. But it changed. In a couple of years, we collected back our money.
And can you guys talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on kind of in the early, and now?
We have worked on thousands of projects in the last 34, 33 years. Lately, our project size has become much bigger now. We do up to almost $200 million of construction. We're doing Route 146 for Rhode Island DOT. That's about $200 million construction cost. We're the prime construction engineer for Rhode Island DOT. For Connecticut, we have done many work for Connecticut DOT. The one that we are just finishing up is a $108 million project, about 2 miles of I-95 in Norwalk that needed widening. And also a bridge was replaced, which was a bridge that was cast in place. They call it, accelerated bridge construction. That was a very interesting feature that happened last year. That the bridge was also put in. So that is one of the largest projects. Alongside, we're doing a lot of projects for New York City, Boston, design, construction, Virginia, all the way. The company's revenue last year was $77 million, of which $27 million was from Connecticut, mostly Connecticut DOT, municipalities, for some private clients, defense contractors, POs, we have with them. But the rest of the money came from all other states. Virginia was a big contributor. So was Massachusetts, New York, and all the way to Indiana, Montana. We have picked up a work with Utah DOT, all from our headquarters right here in Connecticut, Middletown, Connecticut.
I was going to say, when you're scaling that much, right, when your business is growing, especially like you said, since you've come on the last 10 years, going from 90 to over 300 employees, what are some of the challenges with that and hiring at a time when people are, it's hard to find good people?
Finding people is the hardest challenge. Any business will tell you, including construction business, architectural and engineering business. So we are looking everywhere. We are looking for H-1B, the immigration thing that we just, recruit right from the universities at the graduate level. And then they usually get the work permit, and then we sponsor them for an H-1B visa. So that's an important part of our workforce too, and I appreciate all the help that CBIA and the government does to keep the H-1B program going. I don't think there is a lot of support at the federal level, but at the state level, there is a tremendous amount of support because we need qualified engineers, and our universities are not producing enough like they used to do in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah, it's not about... It's not about the quality, it's just the quantity.
It's the quantity also.
And that's where that immigration support comes in.
It's definitely like you see that shortage at the university level. And then you'll have people who do go into STEM fields or have that background, but it's very common that you'll find civil engineers who don't go into civil engineering, they'll go into finance or something like that. So like those catalysts of like this, like in general of like, when it comes to workforce development and workforce creation is not happening at like basically the undergrad level. So that's why like, we look overseas to get some of that engineering talent, because you can find engineering talent in spades, and you want the smartest people, at your organization.
And, in terms of the trades, is it easy to get those licenses over here, or do you run into challenges in that way?
Like licenses for like
Licensing,
like professional, like engineering licenses. Usually what will happen is that someone like if someone comes from abroad, they might have their licenses from abroad and whatnot. That's very common. We have a lot of people from the Indian subcontinent, a lot of engineers who are from India and Pakistan. They were qualified there. They'll have to go for their professional engineering licenses like once here in the States, and then like there's a license per state, etc. So usually what we'll do is we'll make sure that we have like a whole system in place to make sure that they basically get their license so that they can practice in the United States.
Yeah, from an professional engineering license, most states, I believe, including Connecticut, has provision for international licenses, which means that the requirements for professional licensing, 4 years experience, you have to pass 2 examination, very rigorous examination, EIT and PE. If one can do that, then they can get the license here. It doesn't matter where the degree is, as long as the engineering degree gets recognized here as a 4-year equivalent and minimum 4 years of experience. So the licensing rules are pretty good in most states with regard to foreigners also. So you will see, if you go back to Connecticut Consumer Protection Department, you'll see a lot of people's residences in Japan or China, they're Connecticut PE. So that's the international licensing for engineering.
So has your global business helped kind of attract to bring you, when you're doing business in Pakistan, then you have a good engineer and you have a big project here. Do you kind of use that as a tool too to help?
Absolutely. We'd like to bring him. There is a provision in the immigration provision that we can bring for a certain period of time, because we have an office. There's the same corporation, then we can have him for a year working on a project. After that, he can go back, So there are good provisions. Currently, we'd like to maintain them so that it helps us to bring talent. It's the war of talent right now for the big companies, the mega companies too, and to integrate them in a culture that's a good fit for them, for the talent to flourish and grow as a professional.
Yeah, and in your industry, there's a lot of small firms. And then, like you just said, there's a lot of mega firms. You are a little unique in that you kind of fall in the middle while you're still competing with these mega firms for contracts. How does that help you? But what are some of the challenges that come with that? How do you stay competitive?
95% of our competitors are mega firms. You can see that the top 100 firms in the ENR, they have the clout, at the state capital, Washington, D.C., and they sell their 100-year-old existence, big name and all that. We don't have that one, but we do compete despite that. Average size company is about 30,000 people, 35,000 people of those 100, top 50 people. But we do compete with them. It's hard. It's the culture of hard work, the culture of smart work that is ingrained in our people. And that's why we compete with the big boys all the time in any states, with 1/10 or 1,000th of their size. We bag the job in that state as a prime consultant with our people. They understand it better. They connect with the owners better. They serve them better, and they're reasonably priced.
And I think also with us being middle size, so the sometimes there's with a small company, you get that attention to detail, and you still get that with us, with like us as a middle-sized company, about what does the client need. At the end of the day, we are serving the client. And then a second part of that is, because we're kind of big enough, we're sharing a lot of ideas in the company, and we're able to react a lot quicker than I think a lot of larger organizations, where they have their internal bureaucracy, where we try to cut that red tape internally so we can quickly make active decision making. It's very one thing that we talk about in our company is like the model of agility, right? The concept of agility, and then rapid decision making cycles. And so it's not a whole like hierarchy decision making process. Usually, group comes together. We're like, this is a good idea, not a good idea. We go after it, and then this is how we deliver to our client. Ultimately, like, client satisfaction is number one. And I think that's kind of sets us apart, being in that middle space,
What role, being in that middle space, you also, may not have the same types of resources that these giant mega companies have in terms of adapting new technology and things like that. How do you stay relevant, and how do you use technology to help keep you in the game?
That is one reason that's Tariq's role. I think I'll let him elaborate a little bit what we have done in the last 10 years. We have created a new technology group just about 7 years ago, 15 people, and then exclusively, charged with finding from artificial intelligence, AI, Gen AI, to any new technology in alliance with some of the few startup firms in engineering and universities. So we have that group. We make a lot of decisions with regard to buying this software or that gadget and all that. We are the early investors in drones. That was 7 years ago that we did, and now it is doing production. It is no longer pilot phase. So our new technology group, is what Tariq has a huge contribution in the last 7 years in making decisions, in recruiting those folks, and putting them as a major force of an engineering organization. I don't believe a 350 organization has a strong. We have our own IT department right here in the building too, just at the hard IT. We are, exploring the software writing with regard to engineering projects. We actually work with canned software from AutoCAD to MicroStation to structural software to civil software and all that. That will go on. That will not end, but we're always looking for new trends that can help us achieve efficiency. And that is the charge of that technology group, to connect with each and every engineering disciplines. We are multidisciplinary: civil, electrical, mechanical, hydraulics, construction management. We have big groups everywhere out of that one. So the charge of the technology department is to identify pilot projects and then see what the possibilities are to making it into the mainstream, and that thereby get efficiencies. Tariq, why don't you add?
So you were asking about like how, the larger companies, they have all this capital for all of their technology initiatives. I think in lieu of technology initiatives, you have the money for technology initiatives, right? But then we are kind of a little bit focused on what is that next big technology that's coming, and then the implementation of it, right? So I think that's where we have an edge because of our middle size cap, because we can talk a lot of the research and development. We have partnerships with academia. We bring everyone into the fold. Academia, we bring the practitioner, everyone into the fold. And then our technology group sits there with our 3 other divisions, and we hash it out fairly quickly. Like, what's the problem? What is the new technology? Whatever it is, I'll use drones as an example. How do we implement that and put that software to do what we need it to do, etc. And then we move on it quickly. Like again, I think that's where our competitive advantage is that we make that quick decision-making cycle to adapt, and then also the implementation of it. Because I think a lot of the times everyone uses technology as a very trigger word, like in marketing and whatnot. But then I'm sitting down with my team and with my colleague who's the head of our department division, a technology division, and we're like, what does this actually mean, and how does this actually drive ultimately operational efficiency and serve the client at the end of the day? So it comes down to that. It's the rapid decision-making cycle, which I think helps us implement the technology in a very practical way.
Where do you think it's going with technology? I mean, what role do you think it's going to play?
I mean, for me right now, obviously everyone's talking about like the AI boom, all of that. I think it's hard because when you say like technology, it's like
yes, it's a loaded
it's a loaded question, right? I think the biggest thing is obviously you have a new workforce that has new skills, and they are learning different softwares, different technologies than what my father's generation has learned. So this comes down to like, what does the future look like? What I would actually frame the question of like, what does the future workforce look like? Like, what are the skills that they actually have to implement that new technology, right? Like, because the technology is only as good as the person that knows how to actually utilize it, which is what and so that's kind of like, what does the future look like? I mean, to me, the future is, and the present and the future is basically like what they're teaching at the grad school level or even at the undergrad level is so different than what they were teaching in my father's generation in the 80s, 90s. Construction is one of those industries that hasn't really changed, in the basically since the end of World War II, right? Like the way we have built and designed things. Yes, there have been changes, but like there had like, I think that the advent of the technology age is poised to make mega changes in the way that we design and build and think about these things.
So you guys really have with 300 plus employees, you have a very multi-generational workforce, right? You've got, people that have been around for a while, that are, maybe a little bit slower on the new technology. And then you have probably people graduating from college that don't know any other way. How do you sync them together? How do you use that as an advantage and not a challenge?
I think Tariq and his generation in our office, our employees do experience that challenge, that struggle, including with me. I'll be honest, I'm gonna just call. He sits, 2 rooms away from me, so anytime there's a computer doesn't work, I just knock his door. He's not working, and all that. So that is the generation from our side.
Yeah.
And then there is these guys that just use Teams, nothing else, everything. So we do have that challenge. Even we're dealing with right now. But we are believing in those people that I need to embrace, or 10 people that is in my age group, 5 or 10 plus years, in the office, who have been there forever, very capable people. They need to also adapt, and they are adapting. The good news is that we need to adapt. There is no other way than what these millennials and Gen Z is used to using technology. We are a little bit slow. We get that, but we need to adapt. The bigger thing is that, pretty soon we'll be working with, listening to, Jensen Huang, that NVIDIA's, that he's 2 weeks ago, and he was saying that AI will not eliminate the jobs. And this is the big question that, all the jobs, it will not, just like in every generation, we had a new technology, it will adapt with people. So it'll be people plus machines working together. So that has to come.
So who do you look to, when you're making new decisions or implementing, like, what do you look to as a model? Do you look within your industry or outside of it?
Absolutely outside our, even those outside, many of the, famed account, management books that I have in my library in the office have become sort of outdated. We need new manuals, new ways of doing things. And a lot of questions we don't know. We need to find out the answers. And a lot of people are afraid because human mind is about process, system, what you know. They don't want to deal with things that are uncertain. And in this world, there's a lot of uncertainties about the economy, about the transition, how technology will actually mesh with our industry. We don't know how. A lot of industries don't know how, but it is happening. It will happen very fast. That's my prediction. I don't have all the answers. And that's what I tell my project managers and leaders. I don't have all the answers. Do you? That's all,
Yeah, go find out.
Go find out. That means you have to work, you have to open the book, you have to open your computer, you have to do the research and then come back. Of course, you can use ChatGPT or whatever you want to do, but just come back with an answer,
Yeah.
You were talking about the generational divide, right? Like in the workplace, and like how do we bridge that basically, right? Like, it's technology is one thing, but even just generally like I would say like millennials, Gen Z, even Gen X to some degree, there's a more collaborative spirit. Like there's the technology front, and then there's also the kind of expectations, right, of the way of working, and even the usage of how like millennials and Gen Z, I say we communicate frequently on Teams, but the older generation, they like to call, they like to sit down, they like to have their in-person meetings. Like it's a different it's different styles. So let's put it this way.
Sure.
Right. And so we have to that's always a challenge of like connecting all these different generations together. But ultimately, like at the end of the day, like, like especially in our space, like in engineering and construction, a lot of the institutional knowledge comes from my father's generation, the engineers from his generation, the contractors from his generation. They understand getting like the know-how of seeing the project to end. But sometimes the innovation comes from that younger generation. We could do it like this, we could do it like that, and that only happens is like when we have to force everyone to get into a room and just like talk to each other, and then and kind of like the biggest thing is to understand the other perspective.
And it's like you said, it's maintaining that institutional knowledge, who we know, especially here in Connecticut, that workforce is going to retire soon. And how do you capture that while you still have the young people coming in the door to really help carry that through?
Yeah. So I believe in succession planning with the new generation, millennials and then Gen Z, and you have to work at it. And by no means it's easy work, with regard to the generational characteristics and all that. But we do have, Tariq is leading the charge in our company. We have our great values, all the values that we built in the last 34 years that should perpetuate, go on beyond me, and how, who, which generation. So if you don't work on that generation, despite the difficulties of, different styles of working, communication with the Gen Z especially, and the millennials, you have to work at it. You have to go back to the drawing board with regard to working them. You have to find leaders, have to make leaders within those that cohort generation, because the millennials, everybody, all of the people that I have, 25 people, are plus or minus 5-10 years, maybe within my age group. So what will happen to the future of the company? That's how I always think. And the good news is that we are working very hard at it to integrate, and Tariq is my connector with this new generation with regard to that. So that's his position also. His role as a chief of staff is also connecting with that group, the cohort of people, that generation, and to really align them with the company's vision.
Yeah, I mean, we have future leaders in the company, upcoming risers in our organization, and then I have a very good tune, not just with Abul, but also our senior executive team, who are also in the same generation as my father, and I understand their challenges because they're the ones my father obviously is the CEO. He's the one, he has to look at it is a business at the end of the day. We got to make a buck, and the executives have their mindset, of what are the challenges at the company, and then also making sure that we are building that new generation of leadership so that they will be in a good position to take that responsibility. Because I think that's like one thing that, to Abul's point, we're talking about succession planning all the time. It's always top of mind. If you want a sustainable organization that will go beyond you, I always talk about AI engineers. My father, like the way I saw it, he started it as a mom and pop. We are a middle-sized business. Now we're trying to get to this place where we become like an institutional business, or just like you see these companies that have been around for 50 years plus, or even those companies that have been around for a century, they've been around for a century and stuff like that. And that's kind of where my mindset is with the company as it is right now. It's like, now let's take a little bit of a long-term look of what is going to keep us sustained for success.
So as we kind of close out here, we don't have too much time, but tell me, you both have seen a lot. What advice do you have for other leaders maybe who are in the midst of exponential growth and are, struggling to keep their feet moving on the treadmill, or just general advice that you have, leadership advice?
I would say that, any industry such as AEC industry, they should look outside our industry for leadership, Silicon Valley, software, hardware, artificial intelligence. A little investment in Wall Street will also educate you how they operate and everything, So our industry needs to learn from other successful dynamic industries, how they have improved the process, how have improved the system. That is not happening across the board universally. It's happening with some companies, some groups, but not. So, and that is the key to the success, because we work with government clients who are very bureaucratic. They have to be, some of them are not. There are a few exceptions that they're very nimble, efficient bureaucracies. Others are bloated bureaucracies. Nothing moves, and we take orders from them. They're our boss technically. So you do not have a cultural change happening because your client base is government. They control us. They pay us, whatever. And that's another challenge we have in our industry, that how do we shift to private industry over a period of time and have a nice blend of private work as well as government work. It's not that government is not guiding you, but it has not guided lately in the world of technology. As when I entered the field 40 years ago, government was the big guide, wrote the manuals, the processes, and we learned so much. But it's not happening the same way as it happened when I entered the workforce 40 plus years ago. So where do we go? So the advice is that the other businesses of our size, mid-size, small size, ought to follow other industries, how they make money, how their financials are, what they are doing, and how you can embrace a little bit of their style of management. Aggressive Wall Street companies, technology companies. My focus has been in the last 7 years, technology companies. I've studied them, I follow them, I read Wall Street Barron's regularly, not so much our engineering magazine, which I do also because I'm basically a civil engineer. And those have really transformed me with regard to what can happen to an organization which is very traditional, in the very traditional industry. So advice for them is to open up, study other companies, other successful organizations, not necessarily related to one construction and design or civil engineering.
To Abul's point, I think being well read, like you're talking about like leadership. Where do we look for leadership? I mean, for me, part of it is I read a lot of books, on leadership, and like the new organizational management structures are coming out. So like, I think you have to be always kind of self-educating yourself. If you really want to be a leader, you have to kind of self-assess yourself. You have to be very critical, sometimes of your own like shortcomings, and like be like, how do I get better? And I'm kind of like young relatively speaking in my career right now, that like you have to be kind of like ruthlessly self-critical if you want to be a better leader. And then you have to instill, like with the next generation of leaders, be curious, because if without I think that's another understated theme, is that like you have to be curious if you want to be a leader, you know what I mean? And you have to be willing to kind of look in the mirror and kind of critically self-assess yourself every couple of years or whatever it is, and be like, tweak your style if you want to grow your organization. And that, I think, is been Abul's strength. I think where just be well-read, like I well-read, watch YouTube videos, see what other people are doing in spaces that are not yours. See the successes in your space, but then also see the successes in other spaces, because that can give you inspiration to keep going. Sometimes the innovation, what I have noticed is that in our industry is very traditional. So Abul kind of hit it spot on, is that like you're seeing other dynamic industries, and when you hear their leaders, you're kind of inspired. But then, okay, maybe like it's a different model, but like, how do you take that enthusiasm and basically bring it to your organization so that you can move to the next level? Yeah,
makes perfect sense. And it's just kind of working at that every day to kind of stay ahead and keep on track. Well, thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure having you both on the BizCast. And thank you for listening to this week's BizCast. You can listen, like, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review and let us know if you have ideas for a future podcast. And for more episodes, head on over to CBIA.com.